Hi all, this is Dave. Today we're going to do some theory and create some major scales. Got a cup of tea and I'm all set. Okay, major scales. We start off with the chromatic scale. It's our source pool of notes, kind of like an alphabet from which we can create words. Starting on C, these are the notes in the C chromatic scale. So here's the chromatic scale starting on C. You can see there are 12 notes. When you get to the 13th note, you're back at C, and that's called an octave. Each note is a half step below, and therefore a half step above its neighbor. Half step, remember that, half step. When you get to C again, a span of an octave, you just repeat the pattern, so it looks like this. If you were to do C to C twice, back to back, that's what it would look like. It's just the same thing. Just repeat it on until you run out of, if you're on a piano, you run out of keys, a guitar, you run out of strings and or frets. You know what I mean? Okay, the magic formula, it's not that magic, it's just a formula. We take certain notes at certain points along this line of notes to make our major scale, and the pattern, the formula to create a major scale starting on any note is the same. So once you know the formula, you can create your own major scale for any given note, which will be the root. You've got to start somewhere, and that's the root. And it's a grouping of wholes and half steps, and a whole step is just two half steps stacked on top of each other. You'll see what I mean. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. That's the magic formula. You can create a mnemonic for that if you need to, like, why would he worry while wearing hats? Why would he worry while wearing hats? Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. There you go. Top of my head. That's the best I can come up with. Maybe I need more tea. Good cup of tea. PG tips. It's the best. Okay, so we're going to apply the formula we're using C, and just to see how it pans out, what it looks like. So the yellow notes are the notes we're interested in. So we start on C, so we make it yellow, and then the next note in the scale is a whole step to the right from C, a whole step up in pitch, which would be two half steps. So that takes us to D, and then we're going to do the same again, starting on D. Go up a whole step again, which is two half steps, and that takes us to E. And then there's a half step, F, and then another whole from F to G, then a whole from G takes us to A whole from A takes us to B, and then a half step at the end takes us back to C again. So C to C, they're like your bookends, and those are the yellow notes, those are the notes in the C major scale. If we were to do that with G, again, we're looking at the yellow notes. G will be the starting point, then we'll go up two half steps from G, or one whole step, takes us to A, another whole step, takes us to B, and then a half takes us to C. Again, remember we started on G, so we forget the C on the far left now. Just look at the yellow notes. We started on G, we went up a whole step to A, a whole step to B, and a half step to C. Now we're going to go a whole step, and that takes us to D. Another whole step takes us to E. Another whole step takes us to F sharp, and then a half step takes us back to G. So G to G, they're your bookends again. And the formula is the same. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Why would he worry while wearing hats? I think that's what it was. Okay, so once you've got your major scale, each note gets a number. The root is always 1. That's the note from which you started. On a C root, C is 1, D is 2, E is 3, F is 4, G is 5, A is 6, B is 7, and C is not A, it's 1. When you get to 7, the next note is 1, because it's the octave. The root is always 1, there you go. And so if we did that with G, same thing. G is 1, because that's where we started, that's the root. A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Root is always 1. Okay, so in summary, just the yellow notes. Again, look at the yellow notes. We remove the flats just to remove the confusion, or any confusion you may have, and we'll just talk about sharps for now, and we'll come to Y in a second. When we were taking notes from the chromatic scale, the pool of notes, the alphabet, we didn't need any sharp or flattened notes to make the C major, but we did need one for G major. We needed an F sharp, and while doing that, we realized that we didn't need an F not sharp or flat, which is called natural, an F natural. There isn't one in G major because of where the whole half thing falls when applied to a G root. There is no F natural. Okay, so the difference between those two, if you're just purely looking at the notes that we ended up using from the chromatic scale, there's just one new note to learn, which is really handy if you're a guitarist. Pianists, I don't know, I'm not a piano player. But on the guitar, once you've learned C over the neck, once you know where the F's are, if you change all those F's to F sharp, you're only changing one note, you're only learning one new note, and you've added a new key to your repertoire of available keys under your fretting hand. And we will come back to this whole adding one note creates a new key. We will come to that. But as an aside, why do we skip the flats? Because C sharp and D flat, they are the same pitch, but they're not the same note. They perform different functions depending on their usage. Need some more tea. But they are definitely the same pitch. The same with F sharp, G flat, G sharp, A flat. So it's the same key that you would press on a keyboard, or the same frets and strings that you would, fret and string combination that you would finger on a guitar. Well, the answer to that is, not that you asked, but you may have been thinking, why did we skip the flats? Each major scale needs one of each letter from the first 7 letters of the alphabet, basically A to G. And so we need a sharp, a flat, or a natural of each letter. So in G major, we've already got a G something, it's just a G natural. So we can't have a G flat, and there's no G sharp in the G major, and we haven't got an F anything. So we use F sharp. Hopefully that makes sense. You've got to use each letter once and only once, and that letter can be sharp, flat, or natural. It can't be sharp and or flat and or natural. It's got to be or. There is no and each letter can only be used once. Okay, so here's the summary. We create major scales as keys by taking notes from the chromatic scale. The major scale formula is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. That's whole step is 2 half steps stacked on top of each other. And if you wanted to use a mnemonic, come up with your own by all means, something that's easy to remember. Why would he worry while wearing hats? Yeah, that's the best I could do today. Must be the T. In C major, it's all the white piano keys. It's C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That's the C major scale. When you apply the chosen root, C, to the chromatic scale using the formula, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, you will end up with a scale that looks like that. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Similarly, if you start on a G and apply that formula to the chromatic scale, you will get G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, just because of where the sharps and flats lie according to the formula from the note pool, the alphabet of the chromatic scale. And a bonus, just so to give you a hint as to where we're probably headed next. D major, when you apply that formula, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, to a root of D, the note D, to the chromatic scale, you will end up with D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. If you get your pen and paper out and go through the exercise, you should get to that end result. And that is the next key in something called the circle of fifths, which we will touch on next. And so that's it. Hopefully that made some sense, and hopefully that's helpful to you. By all means, go back and pause and things like that. If you need to, make some notes. The formula is great to know. and it's a really good foundation. That you start with the chromatic scale, start applying formulas to it. We'll come to more formulas as time goes on. And once you've got say the major scale, we can harmonize it. We can make our own chords from that. And the whole idea of this is so that you don't need a chord book. If you're looking through some a sheet of music that has lyrics and it says you play a G over these 2 bars, and then you play an E minor over these 2 bars or these 2 beats or whatever it is, if you know what the notes are that constitute a G chord and an E minor chord, you can play any of those notes in any quantity. As long as you're playing those notes, you're still playing a G or an E minor or a C add 9 or a D sus4 or whatever. As long as you know what the notes are, you're actually playing that chord, and you're not restricted to whatever the person who writes the chord book writes. Sometimes the chord books can be oversimplified for the use, so you may find yourself playing a chord that is correct, but it doesn't really work in the song that you're trying to play because the fingering or the voicing of that chord doesn't fit well with the melody the person's singing, and not as well as another voicing would anyway. So that's why we do the theories, so that we know what we can do and when and why, so that we can reproduce. If you get a certain feeling or something sounds really good and you want to use that sound or that feeling elsewhere later on in your musical meanderings, shall we say, you can call upon it because you know what you did and why and how. I find that useful. Don't let it get in the way of the music. Thanks for watching. See you next time.